Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. And today I'm joined by Dillon Mysliwiec, who is here to discuss creativity and storytelling in business via insights from comics and music, which helps him connect with audiences and helps his clients connect with their audiences too. Dillon is a serial entrepreneur, digital marketing specialist and co-owner of businesses in comics, music and media with a unique blend of analytical and creative thinking honed through his background in mechanical engineering. I'm so interested to get into the mechanical engineering to the creativity part, and we'll get there. His journey began in his mid-20s when he discovered the transformative power of non-fiction books, which ignited his passion for business and personal growth. With hands-on experience across diverse industries, he brings a range of insights into digital marketing, creative entrepreneurship, and emerging technologies. Dillon's journey into entrepreneurship started with mentors like Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk, Les Brown, Eric Thomas, and Tom Bilyeu, who reshaped his worldviews. Inspired by their philosophies, he ventured from engineering into business, creativity, and helping others to optimize their brands. Dillon, thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. I'm delighted. As I mentioned, when we had that chance to chat before we recorded, we talked about the creativity, we talked about the storytelling process and such, which we'll get to today. And then you kind of sneaked in about halfway through the chat. Oh, by the way, I used to be in mechanical engineering, and I kind of had to do a bit of a double take to say, wait a second, what? Am I being punked here? Is this a real thing? So I'm looking forward to really, truly getting to understand that journey. So let's go back a wee bit. Just in terms of your journey from mechanical engineering or from the stages that took you to mechanical engineering and then into it. But what I'm really more interested in is the impact that your mentors had on your inspiration, because it doesn't sound like you read one non-fiction book and had an epiphany, and it sounds like there was some work happening at the same time. So what originally inspired you to take that journey, to seek out the mentorship, to consider new paths?
Yeah, so basically, I actually went to school for chemical engineering originally.
Right.
Got destroyed with organic chemistry in a series of classes, so I switched to mechanical engineering, and because of that, terrible GPA. I ended up basically applying to something like 1,400 jobs, but in the STEM spaces, most of these jobs are all online application. If you mail them, they'll ignore them. Like you have to submit them online. And they
Right.
do that because they just auto filter you if you have less than a 3.0. And they can do that because they get tons of applications. So
Mhm.
essentially, the job I ultimately ended up getting was at a local company where I kind of lucked out that the hiring manager happened to be somebody who went to the same university I did, failed at chemical engineering like I did, switched to mechanical engineering like I did, and ultimately landed at this company.
Mhm.
So it was kind of a interesting path, but that's how I got to where I was in engineering. And because of that, I didn't really get to work where I wanted to. I just worked where I was able to work.
Yeah.
I got paid well as an engineer, but essentially, eventually got bored at work, asking for more stuff to do, and didn't have anything to do. Eventually, YouTube caught my attention, so I could pass the time. And eventually, I learned to work while having YouTube on. Now at home I had ad blocker on, so I don't have to deal with ads.
Yeah.
And at work I don't. And in order to download it, I had to go to IT and be like, "Hey, I need a Chrome." And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "You know what? I don't need Chrome. Never mind. Probably shouldn't bring that up."
Yeah.
So ultimately, I started getting hit with ads, and it happened to correspond at the same time that Ty Lopez actually started running his famous ad. I'm here in my garage, and the thing I value more than my Lamborghini and Ferrari is knowledge. And I thought this was kind of a funny ad. The ad itself, like the person itself, I wasn't really persuaded by that, but that actually got me talking to one of my coworkers. And so I told him about this funny ad. I'm like, it's like, look at this guy over here. And he goes, I used to have a library myself. I enjoy reading all the time. And I was like, oh, I've never read a full length book in my life. And I was 24 at the time.
Yeah.
And I used to forge signatures in grammar school. I threw away the summer reading. I'd ask my questions right before class. I'd be like, hey, what was the book about? And just barely pass those summer reading tests. And I was able to get by just because I knew how to ask questions essentially.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, this coworker of mine suggested I try audiobooks. And because I'm like, whatever, sure. Like, this guy says it works. This, coworker of mine who's, higher up than me at the moment, he says it works. So I'll try it out. And he gave me two audiobooks, which were How to Win Friends and Influence People and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, nice.
Right? Two of the best self-help books of all time.
Yeah.
So I started listening to the 7 Habits first, and I'm doing it on my way to and from work. One thing I learned right before I got my job was that something like 80% of all of your stress is like your drive to work, like in life, just because it happens so much. Like there's tons of other stressors, but like the thing that happens so consistently and builds up the most long-term stress is your travel to work. So I moved like 10 minutes from where I worked. So I was super easy. So very, very little reading time, on my way to and from work. And one of those days I ended up getting to the part where, what's his name? Stephen Covey discusses the difference between principles and paradigms. And so he says principles are reality. It is how the life is, how life works, the physical landscape. And paradigms are the maps we hold in front of our face. And so everyone has their own paradigms. And in fact, even if you see reality, it's only through your paradigms. So no one actually sees reality. It's only if they make adjustments on their map. And so some people are given enough information, right? Some people just keep walking into a tree going, I don't understand. There's a path right here. Why can't I move? And other people go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe there's something here. I'll come back and check on that later, right? And then some people can consume information from someone else and go, oh, that's interesting. That might be a tree there, and fix their map. And this is known as a paradigm shift. And sometimes you're given compelling information that makes you rewrite a whole section or your entire map altogether. And these are aha moments. So I'm listening to that on my way to work, having an aha moment of like, wait, this is what's in real books? Because my paradigm at that moment was there are textbooks, which I came up as Google was being invented. And I'm like, I will never need to remember this. It will all be in Google. I'll never need to find this. So I have calculators. Like none of this stuff is going to be relevant to me. And then everything else is fantasy books. And these books will get turned into movies if they're good. And if they're not, I saved 18 hours. So that was like my paradigm on books. And I get hit with this and I'm like, holy crap, like this is what's in real books. I didn't know these books existed. And so I ended up listening to that book all while I was at work. I finished the audiobook in a couple of weeks, went over to the How to Win Friends and Influence People. I listened through that in a couple of weeks. And then I bought my first couple of books on Amazon. Now, I didn't know anybody who read other than this one coworker. My dad had books growing up, but I never like saw him reading in front of me, like, some nonfiction book or something like that. So ultimately, I ended up looking up that Tai Lopez guy again, and he had a book list of all of his top recommended books. So I essentially went to that list, dumped them into Amazon, and I looked for any of the ones that were on sale, and they just happened to be the first 4 books I ordered, which were Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker, Confessions of an Advertising Man by David Ogilvy, Sam Walton's Made in America, and Tested Advertising Methods by, I think it's John Caples or another one of the big guys. But basically, the first book I read from front to cover physically was Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. It is 54 pages long, so if anyone's struggling to read, pretty easy to just go through that one. But the interesting thing is, it's a small book, and all of the header, because it's not even chapters, they're like headers. All of the headers are bold except for 1 or 2 of them, which are italicized. And one of those, it says, how do I learn? And the whole idea was that it explains that in order to manage yourself, you need to understand how you learn. Like, do you learn, through reading? Do you learn from being lectured to? Do you learn from note taking? Do you learn from, trying with your hands, right? And because of that, I had this epiphany again, this aha moment where like, holy crap, like I didn't learn from books. That's why I wasn't enjoying them. Now I am. Which I learned later through another book was I had gone through a phase of neuroplasticity where I had rewired my brain to start absorbing from books. But at one point, I was not like, this was not how I absorb knowledge. In fact, I still to this day, the thing I learn fastest is kinesthetically. I learn from movement. So I can open up technology, just start playing with it, and I figure it out in like a few minutes, where some people could spend weeks on it and be like, I have no idea what's going on. So that one thing went, oh wow, like I didn't learn that way, which then epiphanied later when I was like, why don't other people just do this stuff? It's like, oh, like they probably all learn different ways and don't know that they learn different ways. They all go through school, which is one way, and there's a whole other way to go about this. So that was the first like awakening, was that book of like, wow, okay, like I can read this, absorb that knowledge, and enhance my life. Right after that, Sam Walton's Made in America, the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like he's like the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
the Sam Walt's Five and Dime, right? So it's like I got that experience. And then finally there was the Confessions of an Advertising Man. So it started off with almost like a fake mentor with Ty Lopez as an ad, to eventually, having just people older than me, people that wiser than me, such as my coworker with the books, kind of inspire me to dig deeper. Then going back to Ty and going, hey, you mentioned the books. Like, what is this that you're, talking about? And like kind of turning him back into a real mentor. And
Yeah.
then the books themselves individually, the Sam Walton, like his book is an autobiography written on his deathbed. So like that's a really powerful like book to like consume. So all of these things became my mentors long before I could find like a lot of physical ones that kind of like got me to the next level. But that's kind of like what what started it all was an ad while I was at work and I was bored.
Incredible. Absolutely. There's so much to unpack there. And what I loved about the learning style was your it sounds like your awareness in the moment of saying, what are these things for? Like there's textbooks and there's fantasy books, and that's kind of it, is it not? Oh, wait a second, there's actually another genre. There's lots more genres, of course, but there's another genre that would in some way help me move forward in my life. And I really love that. I speak to my son about this quite a lot. He's 15 right now in grade 10. And I say, essentially right now you're learning how to learn. So as you say, like everyone, it's cookie cutter for everyone. They get the exact same experience at the exact same time. There are accommodations for learning types and such, but for the most part, they're pushing one particular model for teaching. So I'm saying to him, you're learning how to learn right now, which will serve you well in the future. And he kind of sometimes always looks at that as an opportunity to say, so I don't have to pay that much attention right now. And I'm like, no, 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 don't misunderstand me. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is look at it from a couple of different angles. If you have a particular topic that you're struggling with, or a particular topic that you just have an extreme dislike for, that's one of these things. What can you get from that in terms of where the dislike is coming from, where the struggles are coming from? Because he's quite a solid student overall. So I love that you said that in terms of, there's an ability to be able to learn about how to learn at any point in your life. Another thing I wanted to go back to, because we've never really, other than looking at the ad on YouTube and realizing possibly at the time, but certainly quite soon afterwards, that was a catalyst for your expansive thinking going forward. You picked advertising and you picked marketing in your first books. Now, I know you said, but I looked at the ones that were on sale and I went through a list. What piqued your interest other than the price?
So here's the interesting thing. Initially, I literally didn't know what I should read, so I literally just went for the price. Now, I lucked out and got David Ogilvy's Confessions of an Advertising Man. It turns out when I was in college and even when I was in high school, I had been doing marketing, not calling it marketing. Like even in high school, they have a recycling program at my high school that I started. And it literally started because I was bored in class one day and I asked my teacher to go do it. Like I was just like, I'm gonna go do this thing over here. And so I had a lot of initiatives like that I kind of worked on. When I was in college, I was part of a fraternity. I doubled the size of our house, more than it had grown in 20 years. I ran our alumni event, which was our 75th anniversary. I had alumni that had returned that hadn't been there in decades, and it was probably their last one to come back to,
Yeah.
just because they were older. And then I ended up creating a what's it called? Creating a logo design for a winter festival that they had on campus, and they used it for like years after that. I don't know if they still have the festival, but they used it for years. And I even made the logo design on the alumni T-shirts we sell at every alumni. So at the end of every year, there's like an alumni gathering, and they
Yeah.
sell T-shirts there. And the logo they use on it is the same logo I designed like 10 years ago. So I hadn't realized I'd been doing this branding, and I started the Facebook page. So we didn't have a Facebook page for our fraternity. And then I went and cataloged all of our old photos from our old yearbooks, scanned them. Or I had pledges, scanned them. I digested them, put them into what's it called, Facebook, and I even timelined them. So you can go chronologically all the way back to like the 1950s or something like that. So it was very cool to like do all that. And I never associated those with marketing. But after reading David Ogilvy's book, it turns out he had a background. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something like economics, but it was not marketing. It was something more mathematical. And that's what I was doing. I was in engineering, and I just had this creative side to me that was untapped. And
Yeah.
so I kind of saw that and was like, this is interesting. And then just kept learning down that rabbit hole. Coincidentally, Tai Lopez, a marketer himself, eventually offered like Facebook ad courses, for example. And so I ended up going through some of those and then finding other people and other mentors and learned from them. So it was very much a serendipitous, like this book happened to go on sale. It made me realize some past events that had occurred and how they all overlapped. Like I'd been playing with graphic design since the 8th grade because a friend of mine's dad had it on his computer.
Yeah.
Right? Like that type of little detail. I was shooting videos with my friends on YouTube like years ago. I was, making, various, posters and things when I was in college and high school, like just stuff I never thought about and associated. So it was, very serendipitous that's kind of how that occurred.
Fate, if that's what you believe in, or as you say, serendipitous. I love that. So then, in terms of taking that newfound knowledge, that newfound thirst for knowledge, continuing through other mentors. And I do love the way that you talk about these folks. You've read their book, and then you have a mentor-mentee relationship with them through the written word. Is that correct, or do you have an actual literal relationship with them?
So yeah, majority, if not, like 99.9% of the books that I've read, yeah, it's the mentorship through the words on the page.
Yeah,
And the biggest thing too that I kind of took from that was the way that I kind of developed that idea a little more thoroughly was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
yeah,
He talks about the concept of the mastermind. And a lot of people, when they think mastermind now, it's like a group of people that all actually are in the same thing. It's like a mastermind of dentists or a
yeah,
mastermind of, car wash owners, right? It's always like a group of people that all work on the same thing. So you don't really have different insights. But in
yeah,
the original mastermind, it was like, Abraham Lincoln and Napoleon Bonaparte and what was it? Marcus Aurelius, things like that, like these great people, Thomas Edison, inventors, and then putting them together and asking them, like, what would you do in this situation? What would
yeah,
guide you? What should you look out for? Things like that. So I started realizing, like, oh, all of these books that I've absorbed, I have basically taken them as little mentors in the back of my mind that when I go to do something, I think to myself, oh, what would he do? So like that David Ogilvy being such a great first book to get, a lesson I learned from it was it's not even in the book. I have to figure out if my brain made this up or if I read it somewhere else later. But it's this idea that he used to take out billboards, and this part's true. He used to take out billboards explaining how to write really good ads. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, why are you sharing the industry secrets? And he goes, because I know a bigger secret. Ford makes cars, they don't make ads. Folgers makes coffee, they don't make ads. But now Ford and Folgers know that I make ads. And
yeah,
that's the biggest secret I learned is so many gatekeepers trying to protect knowledge, not realizing that by sharing it, you are now the expert because you're the only one sharing it. So if you know that information and someone doesn't, or someone does, but they don't share it, we can't know that they know what they're talking about.
yeah,
So that was kind of a big idea that I got. So by reading these books, eventually I just started sharing the knowledge I was learning freely for other people
yeah,
until eventually that led to much more down the line. But that's how I saw them as mentors. Like they taught me and then I taught others. So
yeah.
yeah, that was kind of how I got to that mentee mentor relationship.
And I do genuinely love that. I think, it's not something I've considered in terms of the authors that I ascribe to or, certainly look out to or anything like that. And it's kind of like, why not? Because I do something very similar to you. If I read something kind of cool, I want to share it with people to say, hey, listen, this is a kind of cool thing. And some people yawn and some people go, oh, tell me a bit more about it. And some people go, yeah, that's Gary doing his thing again. But it's one of these, it would be no different if they literally were sat in the same room as me and said it. My enthusiasm to share that message would be the exact same. So it's certainly a subtle reframe for me. And I do really appreciate you saying that. So then in terms of storytelling, Is that when you were doing the Facebook group, when you were designing the logo, when you were doing the recycling program, when you were picking these things up in the beginning, how much when you look back on it now, do you believe that you were already crafting compelling stories that people would absorb?
I think the fact that what I was doing was working was evidence that the stories were working. Like the idea that I was able to grow our fraternity by double the size. Like
Yeah,
other people had tried to do the similar stuff. But for example, I put on an event where I wanted to do a pizza tasting, and I got literally every pizza joint in our entire city to donate their pizza for free. And
yeah,
no one since has ever done that.
yeah.
Like no, I don't know anybody. I don't even know like events outside of school that have done that. So it was one of those things where the story, like, I, and this is kind of interesting too. I love thinking back to this type of stuff. So my brother and I talk about how we think our dad has a lot of impact on us because of X, Y, and Z. Maybe certain ways that we think. And then I love to think about how my mom has these more subtle ones I don't think about till later, such as my mom is the only one in my family that I know directly that owned her own business, right? And it wasn't some major successful business, but the idea you could own your own business and that you weren't always an employee is just sitting in the back of our head. Other stuff where like growing up, my brother's room was decorated nautical. Mine was decorated like, American flags, things like that. My brother is fascinated by the ocean now, right? He's fascinated by the idea of pirates more from the One Piece kind of anime style, where it's about freedom rather than like the tyranny part.
Yeah.
And because of that, even our whole branding for our music business, you can see the black and white, like the black flag, right? Like that kind of idea.
Yeah.
And for me, I ended up like studying politics and learning a lot about that. And it's like, why did that come up in my brain? I have tons of friends that went to the same schools I went to. They went to the same college I went to, and none of them are into that like I got into that. So these little tiny things here and there. So when it comes to storytelling, the interesting thing is that my mom had me in theater when I was really young, and then in drum corps, but like on a field marching in a performance.
Yeah.
So I've done stuff like storytelling in a variety of capacities without realizing that that's what I was doing. Even something as simple as chronologically laying out the photos from those yearbooks into Facebook, because I could then see this beginning to end story and the growth of our fraternity. And that's actually how I came up with the design for our shirt. It came from all the images that I had found and this symbol that I found of our fraternity that I was like, wow, like this is actually a really important thing. I didn't realize we actually created this symbol. I thought it was part of the school. Right. And so now I know that's our symbol and I put that on our shirts. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where I think I've always had just these little bits of introduction to storytelling. And so I kind of inherently use them not knowing. And now it's more like, how can I take that knowledge and intentionally use it to help persuade somebody towards whatever means I'm looking to grow.
Yeah. So let's talk about that then. You mentioned the music business that you're involved in during the bio. We talked about the comic business as well. What insights, what inspirations have, well, actually, one, what got you into those in the first place, and then what inspirations do you take from them that you can use in terms of the storytelling and the advertising and marketing work that you do?
Definitely. So, quite a few things. So, the first thing was comics was the next of those first things I got into. So, I started my marketing business while I was an engineer. Still, I was just doing it was like a side hustle, just little projects here and there. And so, I'm looking for a little project. I'm on Craigslist. I find a post looking for graphic designer, and when I open it up, it actually says looking for someone to create my comics. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not a graphic designer, that's an illustrator you're looking for, but I could make you a logo. And that's how I got introduced to my friend Greg, who is now my business partner for Sierra Nova Comics. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of this idea where, again, serendipitous, like I would never have found him if he put comic books. In
Yeah.
fact, like, because that wouldn't, like, I'd have been like, oh, that's interesting. Next, like, it would not have stopped me, but because he accidentally wrote graphic design or just didn't know the term illustrator for that, that's why I found him. That then opened up a whole world of people I now know in the comic book industry and other ventures I'm now a part of because of that. So
Yeah.
like that was a huge deal. Then similar serendipitous thing for the music business. in 2018, I left my engineering job and now I'm full-time marketing. And I still do the comics on the side, but it was always a side thing for me. Like I own part of the business, but I basically put a bunch of money in the beginning, set up all the websites and LLCs and all the logistics. And I'm like, okay, now that we have all this going, you're going to do this and I'm going to train you how to do it. So that's kind of how that relationship worked. So I'm now working all on my business. I got no income other than the stuff I'm earning. And 2019, my brother down here in Nashville goes, hey, all three of my roommates are moving out one after another, and I don't have anyone to replace them quick enough. I can maybe get one person. Do you want to, move down here? So me and my cousin, who's a former Marine, we end up coming down here, and basically that's how I ended up in Nashville. So now I'm here in Nashville, and we're like, hey, I'll help you with your business. I'll do my business. And then the world shuts down in 2020. So I moved here October 2019, and like less than 6 months later, the entire world shuts down. And the worst thing is that at that time, all of my marketing clients are in health and fitness. So I lost all of my clients, all of my leads, and all of my prospects at once. No one was answering any phones or any emails because they weren't in their office. Yeah. And when they finally did open back up, they were forced at half capacity, and no one needs to market half a gym.
Yeah.
Right? They can fill that plenty easy themselves. And so that was basically where I saw myself stuck. I ended up basically draining through my savings account. I had money saved up from when I left my engineering job. I was debt free, so luckily I wasn't having to pay any debt, but I was just draining my bank account slowly over time. And my brother and I are bored. I'm like, oh, it's just gonna be a few more months, a few more weeks, a few more months, right? And continually. And we're like, hey, remember that idea I pitched to your friends who were like hip hop artists? Like it was about a podcast. Why don't we start that podcast? Like we can film it, we get to keep the content, but they can be the host, so obviously they can use the content. And so that's what we did. We started a podcast called the MC2MC podcast. And we started recording that. That got us networking with random artists we never would have met because they kept bringing on the guests. And from that, one of the producers we had gotten connected with, which is also, again, super serendipitous. My brother was on there's a show called Nashville, and he was an extra on the show, like just somebody random in the background. He met someone there that suggested he connect with a producer. That producer is now hanging out with us, watching the podcast, going, "You should sign this guy." And it's like, to what? Our studios, right? Like, yeah, that's all it was, a recording studio. Yeah. So now it's like, how do we figure this out? Like, how do we work with artists beyond just recording, mixing, and mastering? And that was kind of what spawned the initial idea of what became the Upstate Sound Music Group. And so it's definitely like a rant, like just very serendipitous moments where I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I can keep trying to push in this direction. And then ultimately, I ended up having to, I forgot what it was called, but PPP, I think it was called. I ended up, after almost emptying my bank account, going on to the that government thing they did during COVID where they're throwing out free money. And I'm like, I didn't want to do it. I felt disgusting the whole time I did do it. And essentially it was like, I have to do it. I'm not going to have any money. All of my clients are closed. I don't know what to do. So I start collecting that and I'm like, all right, now I have my brain can shut off for a minute. What is next? And so I'm like, I'm going to just look for any business that needs help with marketing. And it all started going on Upwork, where I found my first client, then my second client, and eventually that's where a multitude of my clients came from. I started reaching back out to old clients, getting some of them back, reaching out to some new clients. I reached out through networking. I got this, what's it called? I got an invite to an online platform called lunchclub.ai. It's now lunchclub.com. I think they finally got that, but it started pre-COVID, where you used to meet in either LA or San Francisco, all moved online. So because of that, I ended up joining this and I started networking with people all around the world. Some of these connections led to clients. Some of these connections led to one of my mentors now. And so it was very, like, a lot of the stuff that happened was me just not sitting still and then jumping on the opportunity as I saw it pass by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's genuinely being... It's almost like a stereotypical entrepreneurship journey where you weren't fixed in your mindset. You were open to having conversations, it sounds like, with almost anyone about almost anything, because you just never know where that's going to take you or what that's going to look like. If someone had said to you, a month before it, you're going to have a music business, a music studio, a music, what do they call it? Sorry, a music.
It's music business. We have a record label, publishing company, recording.
Record label is what I was trying to think of.
Artist management. Like we do everything. So
yeah.
it spiraled a little out of control.
Yeah, but then be it like not everyone's like that, Dylan. That's really where I was going with that in terms of, you need that thirst to kind of get curious in the beginning. Why do you think that would be a good opportunity to chat? Why do you think that? Getting some information from the person who says, have you spoken to this person? Have you considered doing that? And not everyone does that. Some people are kind of like, time out. I'm in my lane right now. I don't really feel like branching out. I don't actually even know what that is in the first place anyway. So it's such a story of, like an abundant mindset to say there are lots of different ways that we can do what we're doing. There's lots of different industries that we can serve. There's lots of different things that we don't even know yet that we're more than open to learning and immersing in and serving as we go forward. And it's such a fabulous story of that openness. And I hope that the listeners and the folks that are watching get that. Like if you want to branch out, that there are opportunities to do so. You just have to have the right type of style of opportunity, of course, connections maybe, but openness of mindset and expansive thinking to say why not.
Yeah, one of the and this is why at one point it was very serendipitous, just the books that I came across, and I keep using that word, but I do have to, like, I agree. It's like you come across something, but you also have to take that opportunity. So
Yeah,
for me, it was like boredom at work. There's that whole idea is like when you're finally sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I was bored at work. I was going nuts. I hit this ad. I started talking to a coworker out of boredom that leads to like, hey, why not try this book? I'm like, why not?
yeah.
Right. And I love the idea of one of my favorite movies actually is Yes Man by with Jim Carrey,
Oh
right?
yes.
And it's such a good idea to understand that in the beginning, especially when you're young, it is better to say yes to more opportunities until you are so busy you can't take anymore. And then
Yeah.
eventually, and this has happened to me in the last year, I got to a point where I had people going, I want to work with you. And I'm like, I literally can't. I do not have the time. And they're like, what is it going to cost to work with you? And I'm like, that is the right question. Right. I was like, yeah, here's the door. Like here, like let's move in this direction. So that's definitely something that I think a lot of young people don't do. So I met a photographer once. We wanted to bring him on to like a database of freelancers that we could forward to position. Like, somebody comes to us, hey, do you got a photographer? Like, oh yeah, I got a catalog of them. Here's some of their works. You like this one? Cool. We'll get them to you. We get a small referral fee. That was one of our goals. Turns out a lot of these photographers that are young are like, oh, I'm worth $100 an hour. And one of them told us that once. And I'm like, okay. I go, how many times have you been paid that? He's like, oh, I've had like 4 gigs at that rate. And I'm like, okay, like how long? Like 2 hours? Yeah, about 2 hours a session. I'm like, okay, how long of a window did this take to get all four of those? He's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. I'm like, so you worked once, maybe 1.5 times a month over the last 3 to 4 months at $100 an hour, and you think you're worth $100 an hour? And one of them was like somebody's friend's dad who hired you? Like, you're not worth $100 an hour. You're probably worth 25. And if you were, I could have 3 gigs a weekend and you'd make 6 times the amount. The
Yeah.
thing is that you don't want to humble yourself and work for less. Like, you could work for free and get a few more gigs that'll then lead to paid gigs. I built 5 websites before I got the first paid one, and then I charged $150 for the first paid one. I
Yeah.
charge thousands of dollars for websites now, right? But like that first one, it's like, yeah, you got to earn your salt or whatever it is, like earn your stripes. And I feel like that's a big thing that people are afraid to waste time on something that doesn't immediately reward them. And it's like
Yeah.
that, what is it, the marshmallow test? They do that with kids where it's like, if
Yeah.
you give them a marshmallow and go, if you wait right there and don't touch it, I'm going to go leave and get another one. And if it's still there when I get back, you get two. And a lot of people just want that first marshmallow. They can't fathom what it's going to be like having two marshmallows a few minutes from now. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's a lot of adults, is that they can't figure out why they would spend time reading a book or taking a course or trying something new when that might not lead to anything. And it's like, who cares if it doesn't? I've
Yeah.
had plenty of stuff. Like I've in fact, a really fun example was I started taking an online drawing course just to get better at drawing, because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, I might want to use it in my comics one day or something like that. Years have gone by. I haven't used it for anything, and literally I'm now working with this comic book production company, and they said a word I didn't know, and they're like, oh yeah, the logos on the front of the page. And I'm like, I never thought about calling it a logo, so I've never looked up like comic book logos. So now I look at all, there are books on this stuff. I'm like, that's crazy. There's tons of information. And
Yeah.
now I'm over here working on one of our newest series, and I'm the one drawing the logo for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea is like this random thing that, what I wasn't going to do anything with is now some random skill in the back of my head that I could use for something like this.
Yeah.
And there's another one too where I'm starting a foundation, like a nonprofit with a few other people in the comic space, and I drew the logo for that. And it's like a random skill. I have not used it in years, and it's like I started dabbling with it recently again, and then I got asked these two questions of like putting these together. So I feel like people are afraid they're going to gain a skill they're not going to use, and it's like, first off, you absolutely can end up using it.
Yeah.
The way that I learned to draw, I ended up being able to look at other people's works and explain to them how to make it better and have it be actually better, and not like, I kind of think I like it like this, like one of those terrible graphic design clients where they have you change something 150 times.
Yeah.
I'm like, right here, this is drawing my attention because of X, Y, and Z. This is how we can fix it. Please do that.
Yeah.
So it's a really big difference to understand that you could learn a random skill that you might not immediately apply, but it can tangentially apply in the future across any other number of skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely using a growth mindset opportunity to be open to that. So in terms of overall storytelling and marketing and advertising, what's your thoughts based on emerging technology, emerging trends, AI obviously being the big one for us for right now? How has that impacted you, your storytelling cadence or style, and what do you see happening in the future?
Yeah, so there's quite a few things. The first one is a great quote from Pablo Picasso, which is good artist copy, great artist steal. And it's funny because a lot of people now are seeing AI art as like, copying. And it's like, sure, whatever. First off, I don't use it for the art side. I've used it to create graphics I need for things, but not something that I would spend a lot of time on. It's like, hey, I just need a little image for like an ad, right?
Yeah.
So like I don't use it for like, let's say comics, for example. We still hire, illustrators for comics because, it's first off, AI art's definitely not to the point where it can do sequential artwork, meaning, panel after panel of people that look the same from different angles. Very difficult. So, and most artists can't do that, for example. So
Yeah.
the interesting thing with AI is that you can use it for other things. If you wanted to keep it close to the art, for example, something I did the other day was I took one of our recent comic strips and I ran it through AI, and I didn't ask it to like improve it, change it, make it better. No, I said, what are the 7 plot types of stories, which is something I know from reading, right? So like I have this background information. I know there are 7 different plot types. I'm like, based on the 7 plot types from, said book, what plot type does my current story best align with?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not asking it to tell me a story, improve my story, do anything. I just tell me the plot arc. And then it's like, oh, these 3 it lines up with, these ones it definitely doesn't. I'm like, okay. So if I play this out, how would that look? If I played this out, how would that look? If I played this out, how would that look? I'm like, okay. Now I know how to write my next 2 issues for this comic, right? So me and my business partner is the writer. I edit it. So I'm looking through and I go, okay, so this is how it has to play out. And then once we said it out loud, we're like, wow, that sounds way better, because we realized we could close the plot arc, as opposed to having this plot arc that we didn't know we opened left hanging like the crappy Star Wars films, like, where they just open up 15 plot arcs and then never close them, right? It's painful when you watch things like that or read things like that where they don't finish the thing that they opened up. And so by doing this, I'm not having it write the story. I'm not having it even suggest how I write the story. All I'm doing is going, what direction am I going in based on your perception? And instead of asking a reader who doesn't know the 7 plot arcs, I'm now getting direct feedback like, oh, these are things that you're opening up. I'm like, super interesting. So that's how AI can affect storytelling from that capacity. In fact, right before this, I was testing this theory out, and it came out pretty good. There are 12 brand archetypes. These are different types of personifications of what you can consider your brand. There's like the where is it? There's the oh man, where are you over here? I was like looking for it. No, that's not it. Brand archetypes. Oh, they're up top. That's why. Yeah. So the brand archetypes are things like the explorer, the sage, the innocent, the everyman, the jester, the caregiver, the lover, the magician, the outlaw, the hero, the ruler, and the creator. So these are different, different types of things. So like Apple, for example, is the creator. Lego's the creator. Mercedes-Benz, Rolex, they're the ruler. Nike, Red Bull, the hero, right? They're all different formats of this archetype. And these archetypes can also, and this is what I was testing, align with the various 7 plot points, which means if you wanted to take the archetype that you believe your business is and run it through a story, you can actually determine very quickly using AI without having to like super digest all this information and try to solve this in your head. Yeah. And now from there, you can write the story because most people understand. That's why there's only 7 plot arcs. Everybody knows them. They just don't know them by name. And then once you know them by name, you can go, oh, it's like this one. Okay, well, that's kind of like, Beauty and the Beast or kind of like Aladdin, right? And now that you see these archetypes in stories, you can go, I could take this and run it through this story. In fact, that aligns with my personal story and why I built the company. So these are the tools that we'll be able to use when it comes to storytelling in business. And then outside of storytelling, there is an infinite number of other ways to use it. I built calculators with it. I built spreadsheets with it. I've solved problems with it. I've written proposals with it. I've done any number of things that you could possibly imagine with AI that has helped me become more efficient for myself and for my clients. So super helpful in those capacities. But absolutely, when it comes to finding your story, everybody has a story.
Yeah.
It's just trying to figure out how to shape yours in a way that is the most digestible to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And how would you recommend someone with an aptitude, a desire, a thirst for entering into the marketing and advertising space, knowing what you know now in terms of them getting a foothold in their storytelling and an understanding of the basics and moving forward? What advice would you give to folks that were considering that?
So if you already enjoy fictional story, like books, first off, I'd recommend reading them again, whatever your favorite ones are, just so you get a general understanding and look at it more critically, like what's happening. And first off, look up the 7 plot arcs. If you just Google that, you'll find what they are. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. And now every time you see a story, you're going to go, oh, it's this. Like, that's what's going to happen, right? Now, you can have twists, right? But there's always going to be some arc that's been open that has to be closed if it's a good story, right? Yeah. So even twists typically just show, oh, I thought it was going to go this way, but it actually went this way. So it's the same plot arc. It just went to a different arc that I thought it was going to go. I was imagining this arc, but it's actually a little tighter, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing is just learning what those 7 are and then watching, rewatch one of your favorite films or reread a favorite book. The other thing would be, if you're in business or you're trying to apply this to business, would be a book called Story Brand Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And this basically shows you how to craft your story so that it places your client, your customer, as the hero. Because a lot of businesses want to be the hero, right? That's not the case. So an easy example would be like, say, FedEx, right? FedEx could be the hero that gets your box delivered for you. Or you're the hero in your company because you chose FedEx to get the box delivered.
Yes.
That's a really big distinction, because I don't want to pay you money so you get to be the hero. I want to be the hero, right? So that's a huge distinction. So in that book, and he has like a free online website you can go to. It's mystorybrand.com. There's a series of questions you can ask yourself that are basically meant to plot the basics of the baseline of the story, which is a character, like your customer, your client, has a problem and meets a guide, that's you, who gives them a plan that helps them achieve success and avoid failure, transforming them from A to B. And so that's like the general guideline of it. But if you have a good understanding of those plot arcs, you can see it in film or in books or comic books, right? And then you take that idea and map it to this story brand, you're suddenly going to be filled. I just did this with a client of mine where I walked them through the story brand, questionnaire, and like, here's the type of stuff you can do. And like all of a sudden he's filled with ideas. He just sent me like 3 like multi-page documents of how he's going to reshape his whole company, right? Yeah. And he's like, I had these dreams, but I didn't know I could do it like this. And now I can map it out in this way because, and now I know what my goal is because I've made the story and who I am. This is how I'm going to guide them to be the hero I want them to be or the hero that they want to become. So
Yeah.
that like these are the people I want to help into this story. And the easiest way to think about it is your goal should be to be Yoda and make them Luke Skywalker. You
Yeah.
can either give them the lightsaber or teach them to use the Force, but either way, you're giving them the powers to defeat Darth Vader.
Yeah. And I was going to ask there, I think you maybe even answered it there, Dylan. Like when you're engaging with a client, do you have a typical process that you would go through? And part of that process is education, so
Oh,
that
absolutely.
they know and understand your process so they don't kind of second guess it to say what's going on here.
Yeah, so it depends on the client, but very often I try to give as much information to the client as possible.
Yeah.
Some clients just want it done. So there's like, in any business type, there are three types of services you can provide. It can be done for you, where everything is done, you don't think about it. There is done with you. This is more like, let's say, consulting, where I'm kind of guiding you through this, and coaching, where I'm like, yeah, you got to keep going. And
Yeah.
then there's the do it yourself, where it's like, hey, I wrote a book about it. Take this and move forward, right? So I'm very much of the do it yourself action. I like to, acquire information and then go out there and apply it. But there's plenty of people, and I've also done this before. I've hired coaches and consultants for myself or
Yeah.
for companies I'm working with and going, okay, how can we make this better? And
Yeah.
by doing that, it's excessively impactful. So yeah, when I work with different clients, if they are in the done with you or do it yourself, I try to inform them as much as possible of like, here's an example of how this could work. I've done this with another client. This is how it helped them. I would like this to help you.
Yeah.
And for some clients, they're just so interested, I can just kind of jump into it. And then by the time they get through something like the story brand or other forms of like market research I might help them with, they're like, wow, I never even thought of this. I didn't see this opportunity. I didn't know that this was something I had to be worried about or something I didn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
And so very often when I start with a client, I typically go into market research first, which involves understanding their industry, basically their market sector, their industry group, their industry, and their niche, right? I want to know as much as I can about what they're working with. And now that I can identify those, I'm like, okay, who are your competitors? Who are your ideal customer personas? Who are the people that you are looking to help and you are the perfect person to help them?
Yeah.
Now that we know who you're trying to help, who are other people that want to help these same people, but they don't sell your product or service? These are potential partners you've never considered.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of how I expand and just get a full understanding of the companies. And by that point, it's very easy to now go through something like StoryBrand, where you're like, hey, now that we know a lot that's going on, let me take all this. And this is where AI is fantastic. This would have taken weeks of work with a client. I can now do this in a couple of hours, where we digest a bunch of information, we get it to spit out this market research. I then take all of that, give it the StoryBrand questions. I go, answer these questions. I now have a baseline I can bring to the client and go, hey, does this sound right? It should sound and feel right. And typically it's pretty dang close. And it's like, okay, like maybe we need to pivot this a little bit. Like that's not quite right. We don't offer that anymore. We've been moving towards this. This type of client we've noticed is a pain, but this one's really good. And by kind of mapping that, now we have this perfect story arc. And literally, I did this, like I said, recently with a client where right after we fixed it, I then read through the whole thing and I just see him like this, like smiling like crazy. He's like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time he's hearing his company being told in a story.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, that feels good. Like, why do you think those moving commercials where you feel something at the end are moving? It's because they align with the story of the brand and a story that you can relate to.
Yeah.
So that's really the point of it. And so from that everything else can be spawned from that. If you want advertisements, if you want lead magnets, like we can now create an entire customer journey and go, okay, this is where they are, lost and confused, and here they are, the shining hero that wants to tell everyone where Yoda's located, right? And now we can figure out how to map people across this and then figure out what we need to inject from ourselves into the universe to find these people, pull them towards us, and then push them into becoming customers and clients.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what it takes, is like, once you have all that understanding, and that's why I like doing that with clients. I'm like, I tell them, I go, you could fire me tomorrow and you'll still have this to walk away with, which is way further than you were before. And that's what I want. I don't want you to hire me. I start running ads, they don't work, and then you fire me. Yeah. I want you to have something that even if I don't finish the ads, maybe we start running them and they really don't work, but it's only been a couple of months, you don't have the budget, fine, fire me.
Yeah.
Run the ad yourself later. I promise you, you will be much further off, much better off now that you have this information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your energy and enthusiasm and your ability to talk and the type and style that you do is just so relatable. It's it's masterful actually. It's so energizing for me. As you know, Dylan, this is the Best You podcast, and I'm very interested to talk to every guest about what is one regular strategy that they employ. So what is one regular strategy that you employ that helps you be the best version of you?
So something I like to say is that a lot of people chase happiness, but happiness is something that is cultivated through two things. One is gratitude for what you already have, because if you're not even grateful for what you do have, you don't deserve anything past that, right? And I
Yeah.
say that word on purpose because it makes people upset. It's like you don't deserve anything past that. If you're not grateful for the little bit that you have, you do not deserve more.
Yeah.
There are people, and I say that too because there are people. There is not a person on earth who could say there is somebody else worse than them, because there's always at least one more person. That last guy, I've never met him. I feel bad for him, but I bet that even that person doesn't complain,
Hmm.
right? And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is progress towards what you desire. If you're not moving towards something that you desire and you're just sitting in contentness, you
Mhm.
will eventually become sour. You will have regrets. And so for me, I naturally do new things because I'm working with clients. I'm always trying to move forward. I want to, provide for my family. I want to, have more experience, more, etc. So the progress part isn't that hard for me. And then it's the gratitude I need to make sure I maintain.
Yeah.
For some people, it's the opposite. But for gratitude, there's actually a clubhouse like room that's open Monday through Friday. What is it? 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern Time, that a friend of mine puts on, and a bunch of people join. People I've actually never met in person, including the friend I've actually never met in person.
Yeah.
But we got introduced on there through another mutual friend, and I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years now. So that's a small practice on the gratitude side. And for progress, honestly, if you, and this is actually the same advice I give when people ask, like, how do I get better at stuff like AI, like ChatGPT? And I'm literally like, read a book. Because the thing about ChatGPT and all these AI programs that are out there is that they're only as good as the prompts you give them, but the
Yeah.
prompts are only as good as your own knowledge base. If you don't know something exists, you can't ask the right question. If here's a good example of something most people wouldn't even think to do. I'll go into ChatGPT and I'll say, here's something I want to do. Ask me a series of questions so that I know that you know what I actually want done.
Yeah.
I don't want it to assume what I want done. I want it to know exactly what I want done. So ask me some questions,
Yeah.
and like totally different perspective of thinking. So that, like, reading is a big thing. Taking online courses, find a mentor, find what's it called, local communities, find conferences and seminars, webinars, whatever, like all over the place. There's tons of different things, but don't ever stop learning.
Yeah.
There's no reason to stop learning. You can always learn something more. One of the coolest things I ever heard on a YouTube channel was somebody was talking about a tourniquet. You know what a tourniquet is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine you didn't, and one day you are in a situation where you need that.
Yeah.
That's it. You're just dead. Like, it's so weird that just knowing the concept of a tourniquet could save your life.
Yeah.
And if you're never told the word and you never see somebody apply it, there's no way for you to fix that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like you could always learn more stuff that will help you, even if it's like weird, like take a CPR course. You know what I mean? Like there's random stuff that you could do that would make your whole life better in case there's ever, like, learn to garden, get some chickens, right? Like things like that. Like,
Yeah.
do something that makes you better. And if you don't know, guess what? Go over to the free ChatGPT, Gemini, Meta AI, Cloud, any number of these other free AI tools, and say, what can I do to make myself better?
Yeah.
And it's I think the thing I like the most from that is, do you know what Jordan Peterson is?
Yes.
One of the lines that he says was something like, basically chasing after your dreams. And he's like, and if you really, really just don't know what to do, find the heaviest thing you can and lift it. It's
Nice.
like, yes, that's that.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. This has been such a spirited conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it, Dylan. Before I let you go, where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Cool. So it's okay. It's usable. So I still recommend people go to it, but literally just my name, DillonMysliwiec.com. All of my business ventures are on there. So if you go there, there's a business venture tab. It has all three of my companies that I own, all of their socials, their websites, their emails, etc. I have like various press involvement that I've been in. So like podcasts I've been on, articles I've been featured in, things like that. I think my email's somewhere on there. And also all of my personal, like Instagram is just my name,
Yep.
socials, all the socials are just my name. So I try to keep it simple.
Perfect. Good man. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. As I said earlier, very energizing, very, very insightful to see how to grow in general terms, but certainly to grow in the marketing and advertising space as well. Dylan, thanks a million for coming on the show today. I've really enjoyed it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.